G'day guys, my name is Matt Blackwood and welcome to Melbourne. We're a city of literature, and for the next 20 minutes I'm going to take you on a 20 minutes City of Literature tour for the Digital Writers Festival. That was a mouthful. So today we've got some amazing things to see, and I think it's really important to establish where we are in fact, and that's in Literature Lane. So Melbourne is a city of literature and has been since 2008, and we were the second city of literature out of what is currently 11 cities of literature. And some of the places I'm going to show you, like today actually, this particular one, are spaces that haven't yet been activated fully, and other ones have been activated for many, many years. And I think that's really, really important thing, and it'll be an ongoing theme and ongoing ramble from me, is actually talking about the potential for a city of literature and the extra things that we could be doing beyond publishing things in ebooks and books and wonderful libraries and book clubs and bookstores, which is brilliant. But it's really also about engaging extra citizens of literature, engaging extra readers, and making that transition from those who do read and don't read, and especially those who can't read to can read. I think it's really, really essential. So anyway, back to here at Literature Lane. So we're one part of, we're the far end of the city. So if anyone's been to Melbourne, we're in the CBD, the Central Business District. And one of the things that I've been doing as a writer and artist for the past 10 years is trying to get my writing out in different ways. So I've still been writing short stories, and I've still been working on manuscripts. Number 3 is almost finished. Hopefully it's readable. But one of the things I've been doing in the meantime is actually using things like locative literature, so location-based literature, which effectively for me means experiencing stories in the places where the stories are set. And you can use lots of different forms. So for this one, I've actually used Dymo labeling tape. It's a really short story, as you can see. It reads, "As Henry coughed over religion and raisin bread, his opinions slid down walls." It's really ephemeral. It's really short. It's not going to outlast the Gutenberg press. It's only going to be up there for maybe 2 weeks or maybe 2 seconds. Who knows? But that's not the point. The point is that I've actually expressed myself, I've drafted something, I've written something, I've edited something, and I've presented it within my city of literature, which is really important because effectively, within this particular laneway, there aren't many other examples of literature, and that's really important that we actually embrace these different components within our city of literature, because ideally what I would love is to be fully immersed by stories wherever I go. And even if some of them are ephemeral, even if some of them aren't being fully absorbed, rather than thinking of reading as an activity that you actually have to set aside time to do, it's just something that is. It's everywhere. So let's go on this tour, and I'll try and crouch as much as possible because I'm slightly taller than Jess. But yeah, so we're going up here, and actually this is really interesting here. One of the things, and I'll show you a few different examples. We're not in Union Lane. Coming a little bit closer, that's it, out of the shade. We're not in Union Lane or Hosier Lane, which is awesome street art, and I'd love to show you there, but it's too far, and I'm too unfit to run there. But street art is a really, really important aspect of Melbourne. It's one of the best street art scenes in the world, and I think it's really interesting the correlation between the typography and the expression of words and text specifically with graffiti, or messages, which are very political and obviously ideas-based, that actually happens, that amazing, powerful scene within a city of literature. I think the two of them are directly linked. You can't separate them. So I'll give you some better examples around the corner, but I think it's interesting, the connection between the street art scene and the literature scene. Let's cross over, slightly larger footpath. Up the road, you probably can't see it because of the glare, but up the road at the end of the street there's RMIT University. Now, RMIT University has got many programs, but one of the programs that it's renowned for, especially in regards to literature, is its creative writing program. Now, I'm sorry, Graham, but I'm going to get your surname wrong. But Graham Simonson, let's just call him Mr. Rosie Project, studied there, and there are obviously many other students who have been a part of that educational institution. There's some other organisations, like Melbourne University does a brilliant job. They've got Tony Birch, who's a fantastic writer. He's involved with their program. I went to VCA, I studied there, and in fact one of my tutors was Barry Dickens, and he's a genius of a writer. And as far as I'm concerned, kids, the only Dickens you actually study in school is Barry, okay? So another thing we're coming up here is we've actually got a cafe. Now, we've got cafes all over Melbourne. I'll just spin around here. It's quite beautiful. But one of the interesting things about cafe and coffee culture, God, I'm so unfit, is that it's kind of similar to the street art scene and how it's linked to literature. I mean, the reality is all writers I know drink caffeine. The coffee scene in Melbourne, honestly, I'm not saying it because I'm a Melbourneite, is one of the best in the world. It's world renowned. So it's interesting the links of, we're a city of literature, we have fantastic literature, but we also have fantastic things that actually are directly related to literature. So whether it's the coffee scene or whether it's the street art scene. So again, I don't think you can separate them. Now, I know that I keep on talking about at the moment, and probably for the rest of the 20 minutes, aspects that are to do with the CBD. So Melbourne being, I'll swing around, whether it's the libraries I'll briefly show you, or whether it's the street art, or whether it's RMIT University in the city campus. But the reality is that Melbourne is not and should not be considered a CBD of literature. We're a city of literature. So other examples, which obviously I can't show you today, where I live, over near the Shire of Nillumbik, we actually have a short story award, so the Alan Marshall Short Story Award. We have an Ekphrasis Award, so basically an award that's open for people to create a poem that is interpreted based on a piece of art that is within the local council's collection. We also have a local short story festival where we actually invite writers such as Maxine Beneba Clark or many other types of writers, poets, performers, and actually perform locally. And of course, in addition to that, we've got bookstores, Hello Mira, we've got libraries. We have all those other components, and as do basically all the other 31 city councils across Melbourne. So even though what I'm going to show you today is very CBD-centric, that format is actually repeated more broadly. So around the corner is one of the things I actually wanted to show you in regards to street art, and I think this is really important. Actually, we've got some lads right in front of it. 2 seconds, man. I'm just going to talk about the awesome street art. Yes, so you don't need to be in camera though. Awesome. So one of the things about the street art that's really, really important to me is that if you look at the text and the use of text, the typography that is used, the design that is used, there is no, even though it might not necessarily be telling a really broad story, it is actually playing with text, the look of the text, and quite often it's political. So how is graffiti actually connected and related to and embraced by cities of literature? Because that's really, really important. Now, I know this is only one laneway. This is nowhere near the scale of Union Lane or Rutledge Lane or Hosier Lane, of course. I mean, these are world-renowned sites. We have artists that actually come from all around the world. I love the piece up the top. Again, unless people look up, you don't notice the beautiful artworks that are all around Melbourne. And I think that's a really important thing, is that expression that we have in all different forms and how we embrace it. And I think that's what kind of excites me as a writer within a city of literature, is actually connecting, yeah, sure, with traditional forms of text, but also embracing other forms, because there are so many ways to connect. Let's keep on going. So another thing that really excites me, as I said, in regards to this connection, are the different possibilities, the different tools that we can use. So I know previously I mentioned I used Dymo labeling tape. I mean, that's just one example. In Hosier Lane, I actually put up pieces using Scrabble tiles. So, those little Scrabble letters that have individual words. Well, I actually had, you can get them in different colors. I didn't realize at the time, but you can get, the normal kind of white ones. But you can get black ones, with white tile letters on top, or red ones, or green ones, or blue ones, any color you want. So I thought, wouldn't that be interesting if it's really clear that you've got 2 different sets of colors, that you could actually have 2 sets of characters talking to one another. So if you can imagine this, and this isn't where it is, obviously, I can't actually take you to Hosier Lane, I actually created a conversation between 2 different characters talking about an issue that was important to me. Sorry? Awesome. I've got a big car. 10 minutes, madness. Okay, this is the fast version. There's, imagine speech bubbles. And one speech bubble up here, it's between 2 homeless people. One homeless man has been on the streets for quite a few years, and the other guy hasn't been homeless for very long. And the guy on the streets who's just come on, he says, how long have you been on the streets? And the older guy says, about 10 years. Younger guy says, does it get any easier? Older guy says, what do you call easy? And the really interesting thing I find about that is that I created that in a site where, in fact, there are homeless people. And that particular piece that I put up, illegally of course, it's after the first week of putting it up, someone had actually torn off a couple of pieces, a couple of Scrabble tiles. So at the end it said, "What do you call Psy?" And I thought, well, look, I can go and repair it. I don't live in Melbourne CBD. I'd have to travel a bit far to do it. Is it worthwhile? And by the time the next week I went to replace the pieces, someone had written in black texter an E and an A where the E and A tiles were missing. So for me, that was really exciting because someone had actually taken ownership of the work and, in fact, had become an active citizen of literature, had actually looked after the piece, added to the piece, respected the piece, and respected the space and the message. Let's keep on going. So we're coming up, actually let's swap sides because you might see the building slightly in the background. So naturally, when we want to do the tour, the State Library Victoria is looking like a Christo installation, and there's kind of coverings all over it. But we'll be able to see very briefly the outside of it as we go around this corner. The other thing I want to show you and kind of discuss are the different possibilities of using the existing spaces. So we have lots of trams in Melbourne, but the same thing applies to bus stops. And when you've got lots of tram stops, you've got a lot of spaces and flat spaces where you can actually attach things. So here you've got a couple of stickers. You've got a couple of stickers here, obviously got an abstract artist writing their piece, but there's no reason why we actually can't write a story on a post-it note, and here's one I prepared earlier, and actually put it here. And this one says, Stella was waiting for a tram, she was waiting for a promotion. She was waiting for the invite to the Vatican Penis Room so she could add some exhibits to the collection. Really simple. It was inspired by a story of a woman who is a worker who is really, really frustrated, sitting at a tram stop, and actually and I thought about, well, wouldn't it be interesting? It's fictional, yes, but how many women are actually passed by opportunities that their male managers, or just men in general, actually get? So this one is the U Stellar Award, which, by the way, the long listing session for Digital Writers Festival starting next week. So I don't have any preferences, but there's some amazing writers. There's 12 writers actually nominated for this award for Australian writers who just happen to be women. Let's cross the road while we can. I know we're running out of time. Oh, we've got the line, we've got the lights. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Dun, 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 dun. Blend in, blend in. Now, sorry? Okay, so one of the things that we've got coming up here is it's called Melbourne Central. So it's basically a shopping centre, but there's something really interesting in it that I want to show you. So, like most shopping centres, come on up the escalators. Like most shopping centres, you actually have shops. So whether it's I think they've got Converse and Nike and all the big brands on this particular floor. But the thing they have in between all these shops is what really interests me and kind of proves how even companies, such as, or organisations such as, or for-profit organisations such as Melbourne Central, are prepared to actually connect with the City of Literature status and actually contribute to the status. Because it's really important that it's not just citizens, and it's really important that it's not just writing organisations, but all businesses within a City of Literature need to actually contribute to a City of Literature, because literary tourism is really important, and it's actually contributing money to their coffers, so they should contribute to the concept. So this, in the middle of all these shops, we have Melbourne Central's little library. So this is an honour library. So basically you can come up to this library, and as it says here, you borrow a book and you return it, or you bring back another book in its place. And it's a fantastic concept. And I know little free libraries exist, especially in the States. There's actually thousands of them across the land. Most of them actually are in the forms of letterboxes at the front of people's homes. So they individually curate them, and they put their own books there or their friends' books, and then, again, that honour borrowing system. But the thing I find really interesting, as I said about this one, is this is in a commercial enterprise. So even though it's quite a small space, it could have been used as a pop-up shop, and they could have actually got extra money from it, but instead it's actually being used to contribute artistically to the community, and that's such an important thing. Speaking of artistic communities, let's see if we have enough time to go back, retrace our steps, and actually go to the front of the library, and then we'll end it up at the Wheeler Centre, where basically you've got all of Melbourne's resident organisations based out of. Of course, there are heaps of things that I won't have a chance to mention, or actually show. I can mention them. One of the things that would have been great to take you today would have been the over in the town hall. There's a zine fair, and there's heaps of zines represented from all around the world, and zines are a much maligned publishing format. You know, people don't talk about it as much, but they're incredible. They combine obviously story and text and images and graphic design and typography and you know, beautiful forms of publishing that even if they don't necessarily make a mint from them, it's a form of expression that's just as valid as anything else we've shown today. So unfortunately, no thanks, sir. Unfortunately, we don't have a chance to go and see all those stall holders, but there's an event there. I mean, to be honest, there's events, literary events, every single day of the week here in Melbourne. It's actually, as a writer, I find it actually hard to keep up and know which ones to prioritise, because you have to prioritise. There are so many. And I think that's one of the things that in Melbourne we're a bit different to other cities, in that because we've got so many things going on beyond literature, it can sometimes be hard to be heard. So some of the other cities which are smaller, I think they in fact sometimes have an advantage. Here we go. Oh, not bad. So that's one of the things that we actually have to constantly battle, is actually trying to get our voice heard, as I ignore that person, and you know, in a space where there are so many things going on. So behind us now is the State Library Victoria. I think it's Australia's oldest cultural institution. Now my maths isn't that great, but the last time I counted it was about 1.7 million books. 2 million? Okay, so it's increased. And that's Redmond Barry, or Bazza to his friends. We'll go around the corner to the Wheeler Centre, and but look, the State Library of Victoria, it is a great institution. They've got the Centre for Youth Literature in there as well, and you know, it's the interesting thing about the library system, and that's one of the things I'm hoping they're going to change, is that in the State Library of Victoria they have all these titles. Essentially, anything that's published within, I'm pretty sure within Australia, definitely Victoria, they must hold a copy. It's not a borrowing library, it's not a lending library, but they have a copy for everyone to see. But beyond that, all the other library services you can borrow. And one of the things that I'd love that they would actually change is that there will be easier way to interlibrary loan between the library systems, so that you'd actually go, at the moment you might have a library in Frankston or a library in Eltham, and having an easier database system to kind of go, they're all under the one banner, and I can actually borrow that book, instead of actually having to get, for instance, a friend of mine who lives in Frankston to actually borrow it for me, and then of course don't read it in time and get fined, and then actually return it 3 months later. So we're just coming up to now, this is the Wheeler Centre along this side here, and I promise you we're near the end of the tour. Sorry? Yes, 10 minutes, awesome. So under here, you probably can't see it, but this is a dungeon where Lisa Dempster lives, and she whips her interns on a regular basis in order to get the Melbourne Writers Festival as brilliant as it is. Next to that, we actually have the Moat. Unfortunately, it's closed at the moment, but that's one of those literary cafes I was talking about. They're absolutely everywhere. In fact, there's two within the library complex. There's the Moat on this side, and there's Tulk on the other side. They're both fantastic cafes, but they're also spaces, really important spaces to actually connect with the literary community, because, you know, as you know, as a writer, mostly it's something you do on your own. You're not connecting with community, and I think that's why it's so important to have spaces that exist in a city, whether it's a cafe or whether it's, you know, a note that's written on the wall, because all of a sudden you're connecting with something that you're doing yourself, and it makes it seem like you're not alone. So this is the Wheeler Centre. So the Wheeler Centre for Books, Writing and Ideas. It's a really important space in Melbourne. It was actually brought together from the Wheelers back in, I think it was officially opened in 2009, but the reason being is because we were given City of Literature status in 2008. The Wheeler Centre is set up in two main sections, and this lower floor here is actually where a lot of events take place. Now, I think in the 5 or so years since the Wheeler Centre's actually been running, there's been thousands of events. And they're not just literary events. I think that's really important to consider, is that there are events that involve ideas that actually have literary implications, that actually have literary considerations. Because, literature in itself can't exist in a vacuum. It actually has to connect more broader than that. And that's why I love the fact that they have these idea sessions. And quite often, in fact, I think the majority of the talks are actually free. And it's a wonderful large space. Fits at least 100 or so people, probably more than that, probably double, 250, let's say. The level above that are where a lot of the resident organisations, including the wonderful Digital Writers Festival, actually have their offices. So above them, there's Writers Victoria, there's Spunk, so the Small Press Network, Melbourne Writers Festival, Dungeon downstairs, Express Media for youth writing, that's upstairs, Emerging Writers Festival, of course, and Australian Poetry. So all those resident organisations, which the majority of them used to be over on Nicholson Street on the other side of the city, although that is a wonderful building, and I would have loved to have taken you there to see Nicholas Jones. Bit of a segue here. Nicholas Jones, amazing book sculptor. I know that Edinburgh has some wonderful sculptures appearing by a mystery artist, but Nicholas Jones, it's no mystery that he's a genius in the way that he creates his works. He hand carves these, honestly, these really, really beautiful book sculptures, which are definitely worth seeing. So Nicholas Jones, get to his website if you can, because we can't see it today. Two more things, and then we'll wrap up. So, as I said, there are so many spaces. Federation Square, which is on the other side of town, they actually have, well, they used to have often poetry readings, but one of the things they do still have is a fantastic second-hand bookshop, book market, I should say. So heaps of stall holders with heaps of different types of books. And that's a really important thing, which we haven't really touched on, and I'll do it now as we cross the road and try not to get killed, is the amount of bookstores and the booksellers in Melbourne. So there really is quite a few, and it's a vital part of the industry, obviously. This book shop here is a brilliant one. It's called Embiggen Books, and the reason why we're going here is because it's actually, apart from being a beautiful bookstore, as you can see, a beautiful presentation. I won't go in there and annoy the owner, but again, it's a part of a literary hub. It's next to the Wheeler Centre. It's next to the library, and it's important, I think, to kind of, to not have too many spaces, in between each of these institutions, because again, it should be citywide. So you should be able to, what I want in one, hopefully, to actually do, book trails or, literary tours where you're just going, and I know they exist already in the CBD, but I want to start in the CBD and end in the sticks, end in Sunshine, end in St Albans. There is literature out there, end in Footscray. There's heaps of literature out there, but it's about making those threads, and it's really, really important that we do that both as organisations within a city of literature, but actually as writers, as citizens of literature. Last thing I want to show you. Down here, hopefully we've got reception. Down here is a really important thing that I think is an extension, a natural extension of literature. And that's actually here, typography and signage. I'm not sure if you can see it, it's too dark, but the signage here, this is QV, so this is again a shopping centre. This is a commercial complex. But they've actually decided to actually have the signage, and the signage is like this all around the place. It's absolutely stunning. They've actually considered it, they've taken time, and they've designed something that is different. It doesn't just say down, it doesn't just say up, it's the way that it says down and up. So I think it's really important that there are so many components that you can actually express literature. I mean, I'm sure in all of your cities you actually have public transport and you have public transport cards. Well, there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't actually have short stories or haikus at the back of each of those cards. At the moment in Melbourne, they're blank, okay? But there's no reason why they actually couldn't be something else. The City of Literature initiatives that I actually, I've posted on my website, probably about 180 of them. Maybe about half of them are my ideas, but importantly, the other half are ideas that already exist in different cities of literature, and in fact, in other cities that aren't cities of literature. I think a good example is Krakow. Krakow is doing some wonderful work with civic literature, and that's what I call basically literature beyond the book or beyond the e-book that happens in civic spaces. I know, genius. So basically what they're doing is they've got a projector, and they actually project these poems onto a wall every night, and it's from poems from all around the world. So we've had Australians obviously had their poems projected. We've had people from many other cities. And the other interesting thing that they were doing with those poems also is that they actually had them in multiple languages. And I think that's such an essential thing, and something that perhaps living in an English-based society that we actually lose track of. You know, everything or the majority of things are presented in English. They're not, let's say, I've been to Reykjavik, I've been fortunate enough to go there, and you actually have content that is presented in Icelandic as well as English, and in fact as well as many other different languages, in Norse, in Danish. So it's important to engage with different languages as well as just the native tongue of the area. Another great couple more initiatives that I really love is they've got they've got seats for readers on trams in Krakow. And how do they do that? Simple. They had little stickers of a book actually on the top of the tram denoting that that particular seat is meant for someone who's reading. I mean, how genius is that? Another simple thing they had is a park with all these seats, these park benches. And on each of the benches they had QR codes which you could scan, and it would actually play a story by an author, a different author, so 50 authors, and it would actually play it in the language of your choice. So it could actually be in Polish, or it could be in English, or it could be in German. So I think it's really important to look at literature and look at basically any flat surface and go, can we put something on that? Can we write something on that? Can we project something on that? And in fact, what is the different ways that we can do that? So my practice, my locative literature practice, has been about stories in the place, but you can actually have poems that relate to other places also that are connected to that place. It doesn't matter, as long as you're investing in your city of literature. So I want to wrap up and basically say, if you want to see or hear more of my ramblings, then you could do it two ways. You can actually see me on Twitter, which is @MattyBlackwood, or you can go to my website, which is just mattblackwood.com. The other thing I really want you to do is to actually connect with your local City of Literature organisation or your local writer centres and actually go, how can we activate these spaces so that instead of the City of Literature just being a title, it actually becomes something that is tangible, that is existent, that is undeniable, that is on every single surface that you see when you go in that city. And that is partly the responsibility of the organisations, but also partly the responsibility of the citizens of literature. So I hope you actually enjoyed this session. I know I rambled on a lot, but hopefully you got something out of it. And thanks a lot for joining me on this trip. And Jess, no wave, there you go. It wasn't just me. Thanks a lot, guys, and thanks, Connor, for the opportunity.